No matter what genre you like to read, I have a recommendation for you this Pride Month. The first book that I want to recommend is a love story. It's a very adorable, uplifting romance. If you're interested in politics, this would be a great read. If you just want something to get you out of a reading slump, I would really recommend this one. It follows the president of the US's son and the Prince of England and their kind of enemies to lovers relationship. This book doesn't just end with the main characters getting together, which is something I really appreciate about this author's books. It talks about different conflicts that might arise after they get together, them going through their 20s together. It's a very positive, empowering story. Yes, it's a very idealistic view of the world. Sometimes that's just what you need when the world feels dark and hopeless, is a positive, uplifting, and hopeful book about how things could be. We also have a movie adaptation for this book, and I watched it recently years after reading the book, so it was really nice to be able to see such a wholesome adaptation, but I really do think that the book does a better job, really explores the ins and outs of a relationship. This book is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, and I'm going to continue on this author's streak because I think that this author does a really good job of creating a cast of characters around the main characters that are actually fleshed out. I find that a lot of romance novels, their friends feel like they're sidekicks and their problems aren't really important. This is the opposite of that. Their friendships and the other characters' lives are just as important as the main characters. This book is a love letter to New York and the New York subway, finding your place in your 20s and found family. And it's really just a beautiful picture of the queer community coming together. This book is One Last Stop, also by Casey McQuiston. The next recommendation that I have is going to be historical fiction. It is something I read pretty recently. It follows a young Chinese American girl growing up during the Red Scare. This book takes place in San Francisco during the 1950s, so there's a lot of lush descriptions of the culture and food in Chinatown. I learned a lot from this book about the Red Scare. This is something that I learned about in history class, but it's another thing to learn about it through a coming of age novel where the main character is navigating both her own Chinese American identity and coming to terms with her own queer identity. It includes a lot of description about queer safe spaces in the 50s, which is not something that you would maybe learn about in a textbook. It's just so refreshing and beautiful to see how queer people have existed and gathered throughout the years. This book is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Malinda Lo. The next book that I'm going to recommend is a graphic novel, which is my new favorite type of book to read because it's just so quick to get through, but it's also a beautiful way of telling a story where every page is a work of art. So this graphic novel is part of a series that follows the lives of two boys growing up in the UK who go to the same school. So there's a lot of school drama, bullying, and things that they navigate together. But while the story is pretty lighthearted, it also covers a lot of deeper issues. So have an adaptation for this book, which is a TV show that the author is heavily involved in. And I think that the TV show is one of the best adaptations I've seen. It's really just like the characters come to life, and I really think that the book does a really good job of having diverse representation to the point where representation isn't just added into the show, it was in the book to start. So I really love that. This series is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. I have the third because I'm still reading this series. The next book I'm going to recommend is one of my favorite books of all time. It is historical fiction. It follows two Black sisters growing up in the South in the early 1900s. This is a very heavy book. but I feel like it's a must read because it's one of the best usages of language that I've ever read. From the first few pages, I knew that I had never read anything like this before. It follows the girls from when they're very young to adulthood, the ability to have a distinct voice at multiple different ages and tell someone's story in that way is just so remarkable. The book is written as a series of letters between the two sisters, so it really is just a breathtaking work of art. I think this book is very heavy. It covers a lot of themes of abuse and child abuse, so that can be difficult to read, but I will say that compared to some other books that I have not been able to get through, it's not very graphic. Though this book has a lot of adaptations, I really don't think that, while a lot of them do a really good job of the general story, they all kind of shy away from the queer romance at the center of it. I just feel like everyone should read this book. It is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. Next book I'm going to recommend is also a graphic novel. This is genuinely, it's been years since I've read it, but no book has really taken my breath away by the beauty of its illustrations. It follows the coming out story of a young Vietnamese boy, but it's told through these retellings of fairy tales such as Cinderella and The Little Mermaid. I believe there's another one, but the illustrations are genuinely some of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Every single year, I always check to see if this author has written or illustrated something else. Is The Magic Fish by Trung Le Nguyen. Those are all my recommendations for now, but please let me know if you want more, and let me know what your recommendations are this Pride.